Sella Dubois sat in the back of the city bus, staring out the window without really seeing the blur of the urban landscape. 3 years. 3 years of her life thrown away behind bars for a crime she never committed. Her fingers tightly gripped an old worn tote bag containing her few remaining possessions. All that was left of her former life. She was 28 years old, facing an empty future. No job, a ruined reputation, and friends who had long since drifted away. Only one person had believed in her until the very end. Her father, Elias Dubois, who had shown up for every single visit. His once grizzled hair had turned almost pure white over those years. His wrinkles had deepened, but his gaze remained firm and serene. "My girl, I know you're innocent. I will find the real culprit. I promise you." These words had kept her warm during the cold nights in the fictionalized Zelda State Penitentiary in Georgia, back when it felt like her whole world had completely collapsed. The bus came to a stop on a familiar street. Sela got off and took a deep breath of the spring air. It was a beautiful day in May. The trees were lush and fresh, and the sky was clear. She started walking toward her childhood home, feeling her heart pound faster and faster in her chest. Soon she would see her father, hug him, and together they would begin to put an end to this long nightmare. But the house looked different. The picket fence was painted a different color, and unfamiliar flowers bloomed in the garden beds. Sela frowned, but figured her father might have wanted a change. She walked up the porch steps and rang the doorbell. A few seconds of silence passed, and then she heard footsteps. The door opened, and there stood her stepmother, Zola. She was a woman in her mid-40s with an impeccable hairstyle and a cold, calculating look. Zola had married her father 7 years ago, just 2 years after Sela's mother passed away. They had never gotten along. Zola was ambitious and always looking for an angle, and Sela had sensed it from day one. "Well, look who it is," Zola said, eyeing Sela up and down with clear disdain. "Free at last, huh? Where's Dad?" Sela asked, trying to look over the woman's shoulder into the house. Zola crossed her arms and offered a malicious smile. A smile that sent a chill down Sela's spine. "We buried him a year ago. This house is mine now," she said with poisonous satisfaction. The world seemed to wobble beneath Sela's feet. She grabbed the doorframe, feeling her legs give out. "What? What are you talking about? Your dad passed away a year ago. There was a terrible fire at the cabin up in the Appalachians. The fire was so bad they couldn't even identify the body." Zola seemed to relish every single word. "We laid him to rest as best we could. So go on your way. This house belongs to me now. He changed the will before he died." "You're lying." Sela felt rage, mixing with desperation. "My father was still writing to me a year ago. He came to see me in prison." Zola let out a mocking laugh. "Can you count? He's been dead for a year, and you were locked up tight, out of the loop. Such a shame. You couldn't even make the funeral. But then again, they don't exactly let convicts out for that, do they?" Sela was speechless. Her father's last letter had arrived 2 years ago. Then silence. She had thought he was sick or just busy. And now he was dead. Dead and burned. And no one had even bothered to tell her. "Get out of here," Zola ordered, slamming the door shut in her face. Sela stood frozen on the porch, staring at the closed door. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she barely felt them. Her father was gone. The only one who had believed in her, the only one who had promised to find the truth, was no longer there. She was too late. She couldn't say goodbye. She couldn't tell him how much she loved him or thank him for his unwavering faith. She turned and slowly walked down the steps. Her feet moved on autopilot, carrying her away from that house, away from the cruel smile of her stepmother. She wandered aimlessly through the streets until she found herself in front of a small, historically black church on the edge of town. Next to it was a cemetery. "I have to find his grave," she thought, wiping her tears. "I just need to stand next to him for a moment, ask for his forgiveness for not being there in his final moments." She pushed open the old row iron gates of the cemetery. Rows of crosses and headstones stretched out before her. Somewhere here, her father rested. Sela walked among the graves, reading the names, but she couldn't find a single one with the surname Dubois. She checked the older section, then the new one. Nothing. Who are you looking for, girl? A rough voice asked behind her. Sela spun around. An older man around 70, with a faded jacket and worn boots, leaned on a rake. He was the groundskeeper. My father's grave, Ellis Dubois. He was buried about a year ago. The man looked at her carefully, then shook his head. Don't bother looking, daughter. That grave doesn't exist, he said in a low voice, looking around furtively. But I do have something he asked me to give you. He led her to a small shed tucked away under some old magnolia trees. He pulled out an envelope. Sela took it with trembling hands. Her heart leaped. The handwriting was her father's. She would recognize that script among 1,000. The envelope was carefully addressed to Sela Dubois. Open only in person. Sela stood in the middle of the cemetery with the envelope in her hands, unable to believe it was her father's hand. His own hand had traced those lines. But how? Zola had said he was dead. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice shaking. The groundskeeper looked around again, as if afraid of being overheard. Elias came to see me a little over a year ago, paid me well, asked for discretion, and told me to give you this envelope when you came back. Said you were going away for a long time, but that you'd come home someday. I didn't ask questions. He was a serious, reliable man. I've known him for years. And then he disappeared. Yes. I don't know where he went, but he gave me his word, and I keep my promises. More than a year ago, but they told me he died a year ago. I don't know what they told you, girl. The old man replied, shaking his head. All I know is there's no grave with the Dubois name in this cemetery. I checked it several times, and he asked me to give you this envelope as soon as you returned. Sela examined the envelope in her fingers. It was sealed with red wax. Her father always had a weakness for those kinds of old-fashioned things. Something small and metallic rattled inside. Thank you, she whispered. The man nodded and walked away, leaving her alone. Sela sat down on a bench next to the chapel and carefully broke the seal. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a small key. She unfolded the letter and began to read. The letters blurred through her tears, but she forced herself to focus. Sela, my dearest girl, if you are reading this letter, it means you have recovered your freedom, and I couldn't be there to meet you myself. Forgive me for what you are about to read, but I had no other choice. I paid the groundskeeper well to keep silent and give you this envelope. I dated it 3 days before my planned death, just to be safe. This key belongs to a safety deposit box at the downtown Federal Bank in your name. Box number 247, at the Central Avenue branch. You will find the answers there. Be careful. You were framed by the same people who are trying to eliminate me. Only trust your Uncle Marcus, my brother. He knows everything and will help you. I love you, Dad. Sela read the letter 3 times. Her heart hammered against her chest. The buzzing in her ears was deafening. Tears made it hard to see. Her father was alive. Or was this a letter written before his death? A farewell. And what did he mean by my planned death? What was this trap? She squeezed the key in her fist. The metal felt warm from the heat of her hand. She had to go to the bank. She had to go now. She got up from the bench and almost ran out of the cemetery. The downtown Federal Bank on Central Avenue closed at 6 o'clock. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She still had time. Sela hailed a taxi, and 20 minutes later, she crossed the marble lobby of the bank. Her simple clothes, the same ones she had worn leaving prison, contrasted with the elegant suits of the clients, but she didn't care. Good afternoon. I need to access a safety deposit box, she told the teller, a young woman in a dark suit. Box number and ID, please. Sela handed over the key and her driver's license. The employee checked the system and nodded. Box number 247 registered in your name. Please follow me. Her father had prepared everything in advance. Sela followed her into the vault. Rows of metallic compartments lined both sides. The employee opened one with a key and pulled out a steel box. You can use the private viewing room to examine the contents, she instructed, pointing to a small room with a table and a chair. Sela went in, closed the door, and placed the box on the table. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside was another envelope, thicker than the first, and a thick wad of bills secured with a rubber band. She took the envelope and opened it. Sela, if you are reading this, it means I was right. You were framed by the same people who are trying to eliminate me. There is no grave, because I am still alive. I found out they were watching me, that something serious was being planned. While you were in prison, I gathered evidence and realized the scale of the conspiracy. But they're more powerful and dangerous than I ever imagined. I had to fake my own death to protect us, and buy time to investigate. I burned our cabin in the mountains. I put the body of an unidentified homeless man from the city morgue in the fire. Your Uncle Marcus helped me set up everything. He used to work for the police and still has contacts. Everything looked real that I had died. Zola collected the insurance, $1 million, and inherited the house as planned. That diverted suspicion and allowed me to move freely. The people responsible for your conviction are my wife, Zola, and Vance Rollins. Together, they embezzled $10 million from our accounting firm and framed you. Since you were the controller and had access to the accounts, you were the perfect scapegoat. They falsified documents so that every single piece of evidence pointed to you. But there's more. Behind them is a high-ranking official in the city hall, Councilman Quentin Zavala, the deputy mayor of urban planning. He is covering up a massive network of bribes from developers in exchange for illegal permits to build in protected zones. Rollins was his intermediary. Go see your Uncle Marcus. He moved to Market Street number 12. Apartment 5. He will know what to do and will take you to me. The envelope contains $100,000 for your first days. Be cautious. Don't tell anyone about this letter. They could be watching you. I believe in you, my girl. We will see each other very soon. Dad. Sela finished reading and sat motionless for a few seconds. Her father was alive. Alive. Joy mixed with rage and shock. Zola and Rollins. They had betrayed her, stolen her life, and her father had been forced to fake his death to protect her. She gripped the wad of bills. $100,000. She put the cash and the letters into her tote bag and left the bank. The evening was falling, and the sky was darkening. She had to get to her Uncle Marcus as soon as possible. Market Street was on the other side of the city. Sela sat on the bus clutching the bag with the money and the letters. She looked out the window but saw nothing. She was lost in thought. Her father was alive. That meant there was a chance to finally get justice. But how? Zola and Rollins were influential people, and behind them was the deputy mayor. Against her alone, they had won easily. But now she wasn't alone. She had her father and her Uncle Marcus by her side. Marcus Dubois was her father's younger brother. He was 53 years old, had served in the Atlanta Police Department for over 20 years, and was now retired. Sela remembered him as a good, honest man who always showed up at family celebrations with a gift and a joke. If her father trusted him, Uncle Marcus was a reliable ally. The bus stopped near a park. Sela got off and walked down a quiet street lined with 5-story apartment buildings. Number 12 turned out to be a typical apartment block from the 1960s with chipping paint on the facade. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door of apartment 5. The door opened almost instantly. Standing in the doorway was Uncle Marcus, a sturdy man with very short graying hair and watchful steely gray eyes. He looked at her for a few seconds and his expression softened. "Sela," he said in a low voice. "Get in here quick." She stepped inside, and he bolted the door with all the locks. The apartment was small but cozy, shelves full of books, an old sofa, photos on the walls. "Did you get the letter?" he asked, seating her on the sofa. "Yes. Dad wrote that you know everything, and that I should come to see you." Marcus nodded and smiled. "Then everything is going according to plan. Elias will be happy to see you. You've suffered a lot these past years. Where is he? When can I see him?" "Soon, Sela. But first, tell me what happened after you were released. Did you go to see Zola?" Sela recounted the visit with her stepmother, her venomous words, and how the cemetery grounds had given her the first letter. Marcus listened intently, nodding occasionally. Zola thinks Elias is dead, and that works in our favor.
She's calm.
She feels like she's won. That gives us an advantage, he said when she finished. Your father is now in a safe place outside the city. I'll take you to see him tomorrow morning. You'll spend the night here. I have a spare room. Tell me everything, Uncle Marcus. How did Dad fake his death? What do we know about Zola and Rollins? Marcus pulled out a thermos and poured some tea. Then he sat across from her. 2 years ago, Elias realized he was being watched. He was gathering evidence against Zola and Rollins, but they were connected to Zavala, the deputy mayor of urban planning. When Elias started asking questions, they warned him, hinting that an accident might occur. So, he came to you, and you helped him fake his death? Yes, it wasn't easy, but I still have contacts in the department and at the morgue. We got the body of an unidentified indigent man who died of an overdose. Elias set fire to the mountain cabin at night when no one was around. We placed the body so that after the fire, it would be visually impossible to identify. We faked the DNA test. I switched the samples. The official document stated that Elias Dubois had passed away. Zola collected the insurance that $1 million and inherited the house according to the will. She didn't suspect a thing. And Dad has been hiding all this time. Yes, he's living in an old hunter shack in the forest about 60 miles outside the city. It's isolated. Barely anyone goes there. I bring him supplies once a week and pass along information. He's been collecting evidence all this time, tracking the links between Zola, and Rollins. Sela listened, still finding it hard to fully believe what she was hearing. Her father, a simple accountant and business owner, had pulled off an operation like this. It took courage and resolve. What did he find out about Zila? Zavala is protecting a network of illegal construction permits. Developers want to build in protected natural areas, places where the law prohibits any work without numerous environmental assessments and authorizations. Zavala, in exchange for kickbacks, 5 to 10% of the project value signs retroactive permits or manufacturer's documentation that looks legitimate, he said, pointing to several spots on a map. Here on the bank of the Clear River, a natural monument, a protected zone, but 2 years ago, they built a complex of upscale condos. Here, an old historic house, a cultural heritage site, and right next to it, they built a strip mall when construction is prohibited within 500 yards of such property. There are dozens of cases like this. And Rollins was the intermediary. Yes, Vance Rollins met Zila through the construction scene. He became the go-between for the developers and the official. He collected from the businessmen, passed part of it to Zavala, and kept the rest. But he wanted more. He decided to drain our company and frame you. How did he do it? Zola gave him access to the company's internal documents. I trusted her. Rollins created fake invoices, wired $10 million from our accounts, and then manipulated documents so that all the transactions appeared to have been initiated from your workstation. When the theft was discovered, the police found traces at your desk. You couldn't prove your innocence. The evidence was overwhelming. Sela remembered the day of her arrest. She had gone to work as usual, and an hour later, the police stormed the office. Searches, interrogations, charges. She tried to say she knew nothing, but no one listened. Rollins feigned outrage. Zola cried and claimed she couldn't believe her stepdaughter was guilty. Then came the trial, the conviction, and the prison sentence. I have gathered proof that Rollins created the fake accounts, her father continued. I have bank statements, wiretaps of calls between him and Zavala, and photos of their meetings. But it's not enough for a conviction. We need irrefutable proof, and we need someone in the administration we can trust. The corruption runs deep. Many officials at City Hall are connected to Zila. Sela reflected. For 3 years, she had dreamed of justice. Now, finally, there was a possibility. But the road would be long and dangerous. I'm ready to fight Uncle Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes to bring them down. Marcus looked at her with respect. I always knew you were strong. Your father is proud of you. Tomorrow morning, we'll go see him and discuss everything. For now, rest and eat. You need your strength. Marcus led her to the kitchen where dinner was still steaming inside the oven. He set the plates on the table. The smell of homemade food hit her, and her stomach protested loudly. 3 years of prison food had made her undemanding, but before her was a feast. Roast chicken with crispy golden skin, baked potato wedges, a fresh salad of tomatoes and cucumbers, and a slice of fragrant whole wheat bread.
Sit down, eat.
Don't be shy, Marcus said, pouring her tea into a large mug. I cooked this especially for today. I knew you were coming. Selah sat down, picking up the fork with trembling hands. She brought the first piece of chicken to her mouth and closed her eyes in pleasure. The meat was tender, juicy, with a subtle aroma of garlic and herbs. She chewed slowly, savoring every texture. In prison, roast chicken was a rarity, and when it appeared, it was dry and flavorless. This, on the other hand, was happiness on a plate. She ate in silence, focused, as if afraid the food would vanish if she looked away for a second. The potatoes had a crisp crust and a soft interior that melted in her mouth. The tomatoes were sweet and juicy. The cucumber was fresh and crunchy. She buttered the bread, inhaling its aroma before biting into it. Marcus watched her silently, and seeing her devour the meal with such pleasure his eyes watered. When the plate was empty, Marcus placed a bowl of jam and a package of cookies in front of her for dessert. Raspberry jam. I made it last summer. Selah tasted the jam with the sweet tea, perfumed with whole fruit, the taste of summer and freedom. She drank the whole mug of tea and ate a couple of cookies, unable to stop herself. Her stomach, unaccustomed to normal food, protested, but she couldn't deny herself this small joy. Now go take a bath, Marcus said, pointing to the bathroom. The clean towel is on the shelf, and the robe is hanging on the hook. A good soak will do you good. Selah went into the bathroom. It was a small but inviting room. White tiles, an old but well-maintained bathtub, a mirror over the sink. She turned on the faucet, and the steam began to rise. On the edge of the tub was a bottle of bubble bath and a new bar of lavender-scented soap. She undressed and slowly submerged herself in the hot, almost scalding water. It enveloped her and penetrated every pore. A sigh escaped her lips. In prison, there were only cold or lukewarm showers. 5 minutes in communal rooms. This was a luxury she had forgotten. She poured bubble bath into the water, and the tub filled with perfumed clouds. She lay back up to her neck, closed her eyes, and allowed herself to relax for the first time in 3 years. The hot water didn't just wash away the grime. It washed away the exhaustion, the tension, and the fear. She stayed there for about 20 minutes, adding more hot water when it started to cool. She washed her hair with a real shampoo that smelled like apples, not that institutional product that left hair rough like straw. She scrubbed her body with a soft sponge until her skin was pink. She rinsed off, dried herself with a towel, and wrapped in a terry cloth robe. She went out to the room. The room Marcus had prepared had clean pajamas laid out on the bed. Simple cotton, cool to the touch. She changed and got into bed. The sheets smelled clean and like sunshine. Marcus must have washed them on the balcony. The pillow was soft, the blanket light and warm. Selah sank into the pillow and felt the tension of the day slowly dissolve. A clean bed, a full stomach, the warmth of the bath. Small joys that she had once taken for granted now seemed like the greatest blessings. She cried without pain, tears of relief and gratitude. She fell asleep thinking that the next day she would see her father, that together they would fight for justice, that a hard but possible path lay ahead. But in that moment, she only allowed herself the happiness of simple things: hot food, clean water, and a soft bed. The morning started early. Marcus woke Selah at 6 o'clock, and within half an hour they were in his old car on their way to the countryside. The road crossed fields and groves. Settlements grew scarcer and scarcer. Selah looked out the window with anticipation. Soon she would see her father alive and well. For 3 years she had thought he was supporting her from home, but it turned out he had been in hiding, risking his life for the truth. An hour later they took a secondary road. The car bounced in the potholes. The woods closed in on both sides and rays of sun filtered through the canopy. Finally, a small wooden cabin with a slightly sagging roof appeared. Marcus parked next to the porch and cut the engine. "We're here. Your father is inside." Sela bolted out of the car and ran toward the house. The door opened, and Elias appeared in the doorway. He was thinner than she remembered, his hair completely white, but his eyes held the same kindness and strength. He opened his arms, and Sela rushed into them. "Dad," she sobbed, hugging him tightly. "My girl," finally, he whispered, stroking her head. "I've missed you so much." They stayed like that for several minutes, unable to let go. Then Elias led her inside. The cabin was small. One room with a wood-burning stove, a table, 2 beds, and some shelves with books and canned goods, maps of the city, and diagrams marked with notes hung on the walls. "Sit down, Sela. We have a lot to talk about," he said, indicating a seat. "Marcus, please close the door." "Dad, why didn't you tell me right away that you were alive? I thought you were dead." She chided gently. "Forgive me, darling, but it was necessary. If you had known, you might have unintentionally exposed me. Zola was surely watching you through acquaintances or the prison administration. The slightest slip-up, and everything would have been lost. What have you found out all this time?" Elias stood up and walked over to the map on the wall where several points were marked with red circles and arrows. "The system works like this. Developers want to build in protected natural areas. By law, it's forbidden. You can't build without permits from the Department of Environmental Protection and numerous assessments. But Zila, the deputy mayor, has contacts in the department and bypasses the controls. In exchange for a bribe of 5 to 10% of the project, he signs retroactive permits or manufacturer's documentation to make everything look legal." He pointed to several locations. "Here, the bank of the Clear River, a natural monument. 2 years ago, they built a complex of condos. Here, an old mansion, a cultural heritage site, and next to it, they built a mall when regulations prohibit construction within 500 yards. There are dozens of cases like this." "And Rollins was the intermediary?" Sela asked. "Yes, Vance Rollins got involved with Zavala, through the developers. He acted as the messenger between the businessmen and the official collecting, giving a portion to Zavala and keeping the rest. Then he went further. He decided to seize our company and frame you." "How did they do it?" "Zola facilitated access to the internal documents. I trusted her. Rollins generated fictitious accounts and diverted $10 million from our company accounts. Then he falsified the records to make it appear that all the transfers originated from your workstation. When the shortage was discovered, the police found footprints on your computer. You couldn't prove your innocence. The evidence was solid." Sela remembered the day of her arrest. The police raid, the accusations. She tried to explain, but no one believed her. Rollins feigned shock. Zola cried and declared she didn't believe her stepdaughter was guilty. Then came the trial and the prison sentence. "I have compiled proof that Rollins created the fictitious accounts." Her father said, "I have bank statements, wiretaps of calls between him and Zavala, and photos of their meetings. But it's not enough. We have to catch them in the act with the money or the documents in hand. Only then will the district attorney and the judges trust us." "How will we do that?"
Sela asked.
Elias returned to the table and pulled. "I've learned that Zila is preparing a new deal. A major developer wants to build a luxury residential complex in the old city park, a historic 19th century garden. It's illegal, but Zavala accepted a $15 million bribe. The operation is scheduled for 1 week from now. Rollins is again the intermediary. Does that mean we have to catch them during the money drop?" "Exactly. But for that, we need help from the police and the district attorney's office. The problem is that many officials are connected to Zavala. If we go to the wrong person, they'll be tipped off and they'll destroy the evidence." Marcus chimed in. "A month ago, a new head of the DA's Major Crimes Unit was appointed, Roman Pierce. He came from out of state and has a good reputation. They say he's honest and principled. Maybe we should go to him." "It's risky," Elias replied, frowning. "We don't know him. And what if he's also on their side?" "We have no other choice, Dad." Sela said, "If we wait, Zila and Rollins will keep stealing and destroying, and no one will ever clear my name. Her father looked at her with tenderness and nodded. All right, but first, we need a guarantee. We will gather all the evidence and hand it over to a journalist. If something goes wrong, the information will come out anyway. Which journalist? She asked. There's an independent digital magazine, Justice Watch. Its director, Terrence Major, is known for his investigations into corruption. I contacted him online. He's willing to help, but he needs solid proof. Selah felt a jolt of hope. The plan was beginning to take shape: gather evidence, give it to the journalist, go to the DA's office, and catch the culprits in the act. It was risky and dangerous, but possible. When do we start?
Right now.
Tonight, you will meet with Major and give him copies of the documents. Tomorrow, you'll go to the DA's office to see Roman Pierce. And in 1 week, we'll set the trap for Zila and Rollins. That same evening, Selah met with Terrence Major in a modest coffee shop on the city's outskirts. The journalist, a man in his 40s, drank coffee and listened carefully to her story. So your father is alive and has been gathering evidence for 2 years? He asked when Selah finished.
Yes.
Here are copies of the documents he gave me, she said, handing him a USB drive. Major took the drive and spun it between his fingers. I've heard about Zila. A few years ago, I tried to publish a report on his dealings, but I couldn't get enough proof. He's very cautious and well covered by influential people at City Hall and the state government. If what you're saying is true, this could be a huge scandal. It is true. My father risked his life to get this evidence. Understood. I'll study everything and open an investigation, but we can only publish when they are caught in the act. Otherwise, they'll sue me for legal and win. We understand. Publish only when there are arrests. Major nodded and put the drive in his pocket. Be careful. Zavala is dangerous. If he finds out you're gathering material against him, anything could happen. We know what we're up against. They said goodbye, and Selah returned to her uncle Marcus. The next morning, she went to the district attorney's office. The building in the heart of downtown was gray and severe, with metal doors and a guard at the entrance. Selah passed security and went up to the 3rd floor where Roman Pierce's office was located. The secretary, an older woman with glasses, looked at her suspiciously. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need to speak with Mr. Pierce about an urgent matter. He's busy. Come back tomorrow. It's about corruption in City Hall and the wrongful incarceration of an innocent person. Tell him my name is Selah Dubois and that I spent 3 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. The secretary frowned, picked up the phone, and dialed Mr. Pierce. There's a young woman here who claims she was imprisoned for a crime where she was the victim of a frame-up. Yes, Dubois. All right. She hung up and nodded to Selah.
Go in. He'll see you.
Selah entered a spacious office with bookshelves and a large desk. Behind it, a man in his 50s with silver at his temples and a severe expression. Roman Pierce stood up and extended his hand. Have a seat, Selah Dubois. I'm listening. Selah sat down and began to tell her story. She spoke of her arrest, the frame-up, Zola and Rollins, and the Zila network. Pierce listened in silence, occasionally taking notes. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. Serious accusations. Do you have proof? Selah took a folder from her bag with copies of the documents her father had given her. Bank statements, wiretap transcripts, photographs of meetings. My father gathered all this over 2 years. Pierce skimmed the papers. His face remained impassive, but Selah could see that he was examining them with tension and care. If this is true, we're looking at a large-scale corruption network, he finally said. But this evidence isn't enough to open a case. We'll need more concrete proof. In 1 week, there will be a meeting between Zavala and a developer. They will exchange money. $15 million. If you catch them in the act, that will be incontestable proof. Pierce mused. How do you know about the meeting? My father has been tracking them and intercepted their correspondence. Where is your father? Why hasn't he come in? Selah hesitated. Telling him her father had faked his death was risky, but without the truth, Pierce wouldn't trust her. He's alive, but in hiding. He faked his death to protect us and gather evidence. If Zavala knew he was alive, he would try to kill him for real. Pierce raised his eyebrows. Faking one's death is a serious felony. He didn't have a choice. He was warned that an attempt was being planned. Pierce stood up and took a few steps around the office. Fine. I'll start a verification. If the information is confirmed, we'll organize an operation, but I need to speak with your father and get his testimony. He'll agree. I'll pass on your proposal. Then let's do this. Bring your father in tomorrow, and we'll discuss everything. In the meantime, I will review these documents. Sela left with a feeling of relief. Pierce hadn't dismissed her or sided with Zavala. Perhaps he truly was a man of integrity. That afternoon, she returned to Marcus and told him about the meeting. Elias, who had come down from the woods with his brother to discuss the next steps, listened and agreed to see Pierce. If he's honest, this is our chance, he said. But we have to assume they might betray us. That's why we'll hand over everything to the journalist first. If anything goes wrong, Major will publish the report and they won't be able to escape. The next day, Elias and Sela went to the district attorney's office. Pierce received them in his office. Seeing Elias, he frowned. So, you are Elias Dubois, officially deceased a year ago. Yes, I apologize for the deception, but there was no other way. I understand that I accept the consequences, but only after those who framed my daughter and threatened my life are punished. They are also looting the city. Pierce sat down and laced his fingers together. Start from the beginning. Elias recounted in detail how he detected the theft, how he realized Zola and Rollins were working together, how he was warned of the attempt on his life, and how he decided to fake his death and gather evidence. Pierce listened and asked pointed questions. Do you have recordings of Zila? He asked. Yes, I installed a microphone in Rollins's office. Here they are, he said, handing over another USB drive. Pierce plugged it in and played a file. Voices came from the speakers. Sela recognized Rollins's voice, deep and arrogant. Zavala accepted the $15 million. The meeting is Saturday at a warehouse near the old port. You bring the money and he hands over the permit. And if someone finds out, no one will find out.
Pierce is new.
He doesn't know who's protecting whom yet. By the time he figures it out, the deal will already be done. Pierce stopped the playback and looked at Elias. When was this recorded? Day before yesterday. Then the meeting is Saturday. Today is Wednesday. We have 3 days to prepare everything. Will you help us?
Pierce was silent, then nodded.
Yes, I will open the investigation and mount the operation, but you will have to give an official statement. Agreed, Elias said. Then we will do the following. The plan was simple, but it required precision. On Saturday, Zavala and the developer would meet at a warehouse near the old port. Rollins would bring the money, $15 million. Zavala would hand over the construction permit. Roman Pierce and his team would wait hidden to arrest them at the moment of the exchange. There was one problem. They didn't know the developer who was going to pay Zavala. Elias had only heard his last name, Gross, the owner of a large construction company. But they didn't know what he looked like or the exact address of his office. Without identifying the developer, the trap could fail. If he suspected anything, he could alert Zila. Pierce proposed surveillance. His people would follow Rollins and find out where and when he would meet Gross before Saturday. It was highly likely they would finalize the details the day before. On Wednesday afternoon, surveillance on Rollins began. His office was in a glass business center on the 5th floor. Rollins, a man in his 50s with a receding hairline and a gut, wore expensive suits and drove a black SUV. Every time Sela saw his smug face, she felt anger rise in her throat. On Thursday morning, Rollins left his house and, instead of going to the office, took the highway toward the outskirts. Pierce's team followed him at a distance. He arrived at a roadside diner and parked. 10 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled up. A man in a suit got out. It was Gross. They met inside. They talked for about an hour. The agents recorded them from the window. Then both left. Pierce received the images and showed them to Elias and Sela. There you have Gross. Now, we know what he looks like. We'll be ready for Saturday. On Friday, the tension was immense. Elias and Selah spent the day at Marcus' house going over the details.
Pierce sent a message.
Tomorrow at 6 p.m., be ready. Selah barely slept Saturday night. She tossed and turned, thinking about the arrest. What if Zavala and Rollins smelled the trap? What if they had bodyguards? What if someone in law enforcement was on Zala's side and alerted him? In the morning, her father hugged her. It'll work out, girl. We've come too far to back down. I'm scared, Dad. Me too. But together, we're stronger. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they left for the old port. It was an abandoned area on the outskirts where barges, once unloaded. Now only semi-ruined warehouses and rusty cranes remained, a perfect place for a clandestine meeting. Pierce and his team were already there. They took positions in an adjacent warehouse from which they could see the open area in front of the main building. Each agent had an intercom and a camera. Selah and Elias stayed in Pierce's car parked in the shadow of an old hangar. We wait, Pierce said laconically. Time stretched with painful slowness. Selah looked at the clock. 58, 5:59, 6 o'clock. Precisely at 6, Rollins' black SUV drove onto the open area. He parked near the entrance and got out with a metallic briefcase in his hand. A minute later, Gross's silver sedan arrived. The developer got out, looked around, and approached Rollins. They exchanged greetings and entered the warehouse. Zavala, Selah whispered. He'll come separately. A public official can't be seen with them, Pierce replied. 5 minutes later, a dark blue car with tinted windows stopped. A man 5'10" with an impeccable suit and a folder in his hand got out. Zavala Selah recognized him from the photos. Corpulent, imposing, with an authoritarian demeanor. He entered the warehouse. Pierce brought the intercom to his mouth. Everyone ready. Wait for the signal. Muffled voices were heard from a half-open window. An agent deployed a directional microphone and began recording. The voices became clear. The money is here, Zavala's voice said. 15 million as we agreed, Gross replied. And the permit? Here are the documents. The permit was signed yesterday. The report certifies that the land is not a natural monument. All the stamps are in order. You can start tomorrow.
Perfect.
Here is your cut. The click of the briefcase was heard. Do you want to count it? No, I trust you. It's a pleasure doing business with professionals. Pierce pressed the intercom button.
Go.
Go in for the arrest. The agents stormed in from several sides at once. Selah and Elias jumped out of the car and ran after them.
Inside, chaos reigned.
Selah tried to grab the briefcase, but an agent snatched it away. Gross ran for the exit, but was intercepted. Rollins stood there, ashen, his mouth hanging open.
Zavala.
Rollins.
Gross.
You are under arrest for suspected corruption, bribery, and fraud. Pierce announced loudly, showing his badge. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Zavala glared at him with hatred. You'll regret this, Pierce. I have friends in high places. You'll be fired in a week. We'll see, Pierce replied calmly. For now, put the cuffs on them. They searched the scene. The briefcase indeed contained $15 million. Zavala's folder held fake permits and fraudulent seals. Everything was seized as evidence. When the three were let out, Selah saw their faces. Zavala was dark and furious. Gross was terrified. Rollins was disoriented. Suddenly, Rollins saw her and froze. You should be in prison. I've been released, Vance, Selah replied coldly. Now it's your turn. How did you find out all this? Who helped you? Elias stepped out of the shadows and stood next to his daughter. Rollins saw him and turned even paler. Alias. But you were dead. As you can see, no. And now you will answer for everything you did. They led Rollins to the police car. Selah watched the vehicles with the detainees drive away and felt a mix of triumph and relief. It wasn't the end. Interrogations, proceedings, the trial, they were all still to come. But the most important step had been taken. The culprits had fallen. After the arrests, the hard work began. Roman Pierce interrogated the arrest, reviewed documents, and gathered additional evidence. Zavali stubbornly denied his guilt, claiming the money was not a bribe but a loan. But the recordings of the conversations and the testimony of Gross, who decided to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence, shattered his alibi. Rollins tried to pin all the responsibility on Zola, claiming she orchestrated the theft and the frame-up of Tsila. However, the bank statement showed that he had created the fictitious accounts and moved the money. Zola was summoned for questioning. Tsila was present during her stepmother's interrogation. Zola entered Pierce's office with her head held high, but upon seeing Selah and Elias, she froze. "You," she pointed at her husband. "You're alive?" "Yes, Zola." "Alive and well," Elias replied calmly. "And now you will answer for your betrayal." "What betrayal? I didn't do anything." She tried to protest, though her voice trembled. Pierce placed a folder in front of her. "Here are the movements on your accounts. After the theft at your husband's company, you received $5 million. The transfers originated from accounts controlled by Rollins. Explain where that money came from." Zola turned pale. "Vance loaned it to me. I had debts." "What debts?" Elias asked coldly. "I paid for everything. You lived without deprivation. It was personal." "Here are also the recordings of your calls with Rollins," Pierce said, playing the audio. Zola's voice came from the speakers. "When are you sending me my cut? I'm risking as much as you are. If all goes well, Elias won't know anything, and the girl will end up in jail." Zola covered her face with her hands.
I didn't want to.
"It was Vance. He dragged me into this." "You're lying." Elias cut in. "You suggested the theft yourself. You gave him access to the documents. You helped set a trap for Tsila. She was in my way." Zola suddenly screamed, cracking. "You always loved her more than me. I was nobody to you, just a convenient wife, and she, your golden child. I wanted to push her out and take what was mine." Tsila listened to the outburst and felt not rage, but pity. Zola had spent 7 years in deception, betrayed her husband, and ruined her stepdaughter's life. For what? For money and an illusion of affection. Pierce ended the interrogation and ordered Zola's arrest. They led her away, and Tsila stayed in the office, looking out the window. "How do you feel?" her father asked, approaching her. "Tired, Dad." "Tired of all this?" "It will be over soon. The court will pass sentence, and we can live in peace. And you? You faked your death. That's also a crime." Pierce promised to take the circumstances into account. "They'll probably give me a fine. It doesn't matter. The essential thing is that you are free." Tsila hugged him. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for believing in me. I will always believe in you, girl." A few days later, Terrence Major published a major investigative piece in his digital magazine, Justice Watch, Corruption at City Hall, How They Sold Our City. The article detailed the Tsila plot, listed the illegal construction projects, and included recordings and photographs. The story exploded. Other media outlets replicated it, and a wave of citizen outrage erupted. The mayor, who had previously covered for Zavala, was forced to resign. The regional district attorney's office began a massive review of all construction projects from the past 5 years. It came to light that Zavala had granted illegal permits worth over $200 million, causing enormous damage to the environment and cultural heritage. Elias was indeed fined for faking his death, but the judge considered that he acted to save his daughter and expose corruption. Treating it as a mitigating factor, Tsila was fully acquitted. The court recognized that Rollins and Zola had framed her. She was awarded $1.5 million in compensation for her 3 years of unjust imprisonment. It didn't give back the lost time, but it helped her start over. Rollins was sentenced to 12 years for fraud, document forgery, and bribery. Zola received 8 years for complicity in the embezzlement and falsification. Zavala received 15 years and the confiscation of all his assets. Gross received 5 years of probation for cooperating with the prosecution. When the sentences were read, Tsila felt that the weight that had oppressed her for years was finally lifted. Justice had prevailed. Those who destroyed her life were punished. 3 months had passed since the trial. Tsila and Elias returned to the family home, which was legally theirs again. Zola had managed to sell some of the furniture and belongings, but they bought new ones. Her father rebuilt the company that Rollins had driven to bankruptcy. It was a long and difficult process, but they had the main thing. They were together. One morning, Zila was having coffee in the kitchen when the phone rang. It was Roman Pierce. "Good morning, Zila. How are things going?" "Fine, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you for asking.
I'm not just calling out of courtesy. I have a proposal. I need help. Someone who understands the mechanics of financial schemes and knows how to handle documentation. You spent 3 years in prison for someone else's crime, but you're an expert in accounting. Would you be willing to work as a consultant on an active case?" Zila stood motionless with the mug in her hand. "Are you serious?"
Completely.
"We are investigating a case of corruption and economic crime. Your experience would be invaluable."
Zila thought about it.
This job was an opportunity to help others who were unjustly accused, to fight corruption, and to give meaning to those 3 years behind bars. "I accept, Mr. Pierce. When do I start?"
"Monday."
She hung up and smiled. A life that seemed ruined was beginning to find new purpose. Her father also found his calling. He began consulting small businesses on defense against usurpation attempts and financial fraud. His experience against Zavala and Rollins made him an expert. Business owners came to him, and he helped them. Satisfied with protecting honest people from scammers, Uncle Marcus continued his quiet life. Proud of his niece and brother, he visited them often. Together they recalled those intense days when they prepared the trap. One evening, Zila and Elias sat on the porch watching the sunset. It was deep autumn. The leaves were turning yellow, and the air was crisp and clean. "You know, girl, I often think about how everything could have turned out," Elias said, sipping his tea. "If I hadn't faked my death, Zavala could have killed me. So many coincidences, and they all worked in our favor." "They weren't coincidences, Dad. It was your decision and your bravery. You risked everything for the truth. We both risked it. You could have broken in prison, but you held strong. That means a lot." Zila looked at him. In these past months, he had seemed to grow younger. His eyes shone again. He had gained some weight back. The wrinkles had softened. The gray in his hair looked noble, not. "Do you think about Mom?" she asked softly. "Every day she would be proud of you. You are as strong and honest as she was." "I miss her."
"Me too.
But we must keep going." They fell silent, listening to the rustling of the leaves and the chirping of the birds. Zila felt a peace she hadn't known in years. For the first time since her arrest, she could breathe deeply without fear that everything would collapse tomorrow. "Dad, about the company. Are you thinking of expanding?" "No. Expansion isn't the priority right now. I want to restore our reputation, build a good team, and work cleanly. We'll have enough money. The main thing is a clear conscience." "I like your approach. And you ready for work?" "Yes, I'm ready to be useful again." "I know you're going to do great. You're smart, tenacious, and honest." Zila smiled. She truly felt that she had finally found peace. 3 years in jail hadn't broken her. They had tempered her. Now she knew the price of justice and was willing to fight for it. Another year passed. Zila successfully worked alongside her father in the firm. Elias managed to completely rebuild it. He hired new personnel, closed deals with several important clients, and regained the partners' trust. The business's reputation was impeccable once more. One Saturday, they went to the cemetery together, not the place where the groundskeeper had given Zila the letter, but the one where Zila's mother, Irene, rested. Her grave was well kept with a white marble headstone and fresh flowers. Her father went there once a month. They stood in silence, remembering the wife and mother. Then Elias said, "Irene, we did it. We defeated those who tried to destroy our family. Zila is strong just like you. I'm proud of her." Zila left flowers on the grave and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me never to give up." They returned home where Uncle Marcus was already setting the table. He had prepared a traditional family dinner. Homemade soup, potatoes with sautéed mushrooms and meatballs. The 3 of them sat down just like when Zila was a child. Sometimes I think it was all like a spy novel, Marcus commented while serving the plates. A fake death, secret meetings, a trap for the corrupt. Like in the movies, Elias smiled ironically. Except in the movies, the heroes don't feel fear, and we were afraid every day. But we won, Sela added. And that's what matters. They ate dinner, talked about the future, and made plans. Marcus wanted to go fishing next spring. Elias planned to open a new line of business. Sela listened to them with a smile. Life was moving forward, but now it was full of meaning and justice. The dark years were behind them, and the future was bright. That night, Sela was in her room, looking through old photographs. There she was with her mother on the beach, there with her father on her first birthday, there at her college graduation. Each photo was a piece of the past, a reminder of who she had been and who she had become. She opened a drawer and took out her father's letter, the same one the groundskeeper had given her at the cemetery. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but the words were still warm and firm. Sela folded the letter and put it away again. That letter had changed her life, given her hope, and given her the strength to fight. She would always keep it as a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is light. Her father knocked on the door and poked his head in. Not sleeping, just reviewing photos, memories. He sat down next to her and looked at the images. Time flies. It seems like only yesterday you were a little girl, and today you're a grown woman. Are you proud of me? More than you can imagine. They hugged, and Sela felt a warmth fill her chest. She had gone through hell, but she hadn't broken. She lost 3 years of her life, but gained strength and certainty. She knew betrayal, but didn't stop trusting. Above all, she understood that justice exists and that it is worth fighting for. Another half-year passed. Elias expanded the business and opened a branch in a nearby city. He advised entrepreneurs and shared his experience. His story became known. Several journalists interviewed him, and he participated in conferences. People admired his courage and determination. Sela helped him in all his initiatives. Uncle Marcus truly went fishing every weekend. He was happy to have helped his brother and niece and proud that justice had prevailed. Zola and Rollins were serving their sentences. Sometimes Sela thought about them, but she felt neither resentment nor pity. They chose their path and received the deserved punishment. Zavala was also in prison. His schemes were fully exposed, and local authorities were now working to recover the damage to natural areas. One spring day, Sela returned to the cemetery where the groundskeeper had given her father's letter. She found him near the chapel, sweeping the paths. "Good afternoon," she greeted him. The old man looked up and recognized her. The girl who was looking for her father.
You found him then?
I found him. Thank you for keeping the letter safe. I promised Elias, and I kept my word. I'm glad everything worked out for you. Sela held out an envelope. This is a token of gratitude from my father and me. You helped us more than you know. The man opened the envelope and saw cash.
He shook his head.
It's not necessary. I just did what I had to do. Please accept it. You earned it. The groundskeeper was silent, then nodded and put it in his pocket. Thank you, and may you live long and happy lives. Sela said goodbye and left the cemetery. She walked down the street enjoying the sun and the warmth of spring. Life had settled down, justice had triumphed, and the future was bright. That night, the family reunited again. Sela, Elias, and Uncle Marcus. They sat on the porch, drank tea, and chatted. Her father talked about a new project. Marcus talked about a huge bass he had caught. Sometimes it feels like it was all a dream, Sela said, looking at the sunset. The jail, the trap, your fake death, the ambush for the corrupt.
As if it didn't happen to me.
But it was real, girl.
Hard.
Terrifying, and we got through it. Her father said we came out stronger. Yes, and I'm grateful for the experience. It taught me a lot. The main thing is that you didn't become bitter, Marcus observed. Many people become hard and vengeful after prison. You remained good and honest.
Sela thought about it.
She really could have become a resentful, distrustful person, thirsty for revenge. But her father had taught her that justice matters more than vengeance.